The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the gleaming floor of a bustling cafe in downtown San Francisco. The place was alive with the clinking of cups, the hum of coffee grinders, and the soothing aroma of roasted beans. Behind the counter stood Jake, a soft-spoken young man in his early 20s with a meticulous demeanor and an infectious smile. Jake had been working at the cafe for 6 months, a milestone he celebrated quietly. He had autism, which made certain social interactions challenging, but his dedication to precision and his genuine love for helping others made him a valued employee. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. Jake's manager, Sarah, had hired him after a brief interview where he had nervously stammered through his responses. She saw something in his earnestness, a kind of purity and determination she believed would shine if given the right environment. Over time, the regular customers came to appreciate Jake's quirks, the way he lined up cups in perfect symmetry, his soft-spoken "have a wonderful day" at the end of every transaction, and his uncanny ability to remember their preferred orders down to the smallest details. That day, the cafe had an unusually high number of patrons, many of whom were hurrying to beat the evening rush. Among them was a man in his late 30s wearing an expensive suit and exuding an air of impatience. He had a Bluetooth earpiece firmly lodged in one ear, and his rapid-fire conversation about quarterly earnings suggested he was a corporate executive on a tight schedule. He stepped up to the counter, his eyes darting to the menu overhead, and barked out his order for a large caramel macchiato, extra hot, with no whipped cream. Jake, eager to keep the line moving, nodded and repeated the order in his clear, deliberate tone. The man, distracted by his phone call, didn't respond and instead kept muttering something into his earpiece. Moments later, Jake handed over the drink with a bright smile, saying, "Here's your caramel macchiato. Extra hot, no whipped cream. Enjoy your day, sir." The man glanced at the drink, frowned, and immediately turned red with irritation. "What is this?" he snapped, waving the cup in Jake's face. "This isn't what I ordered." Jake, taken aback, furrowed his brow and tilted his head in confusion. "I believe that's exactly what you asked for, sir," he replied softly, his voice trembling just a little. Conflict wasn't something Jake handled well. He preferred clear, calm interactions. The man's voice grew louder, drawing the attention of nearby customers. "Don't tell me what I ordered. Are you deaf or just stupid? I said no caramel drizzle. This is unacceptable." Sarah, hearing the commotion from across the cafe, started making her way toward the counter, but the man's tirade continued before she could intervene. "How do you even work here? They just hire anyone these days, don't they?" Jake's face turned pale, and his hands began to fidget nervously at his sides. He opened his mouth to respond, but found himself unable to form the words. His brain felt like it was spinning, trying to process the man's anger and the accusations hurled his way. Unknown to the man, another customer in the cafe had been observing the scene unfold from a quiet corner near the window. Steph Curry, the Golden State Warriors star player, was enjoying a rare moment of anonymity. Dressed in a casual hoodie and cap, he had come to the cafe to relax after a morning workout. He was no stranger to public attention, but today he wanted nothing more than to sip his coffee and read a book in peace. However, the commotion at the counter had shattered the tranquil atmosphere, and now his focus was entirely on the exchange taking place. Steph watched as Jake stood frozen, his hands twitching slightly, his eyes darting to Sarah for help. The man in the suit continued his verbal assault, leaning over the counter to emphasize his displeasure. "What's wrong with you? This is simple. I shouldn't have to explain myself 3 times. Is this too hard for you to understand?" Sarah finally reached the counter and stepped between Jake and the man. "Sir," she began firmly, though her tone remained polite, "I'm sorry about the misunderstanding. I'll personally remake your drink, but I'm going to ask you to lower your voice and treat my staff with respect." The man scoffed. "Respect? How about hiring people who actually know how to do their jobs? I'm in a hurry, and I don't have time for amateur hour." At this point, the cafe had fallen nearly silent, with every eye on the unfolding drama. Steph set his coffee down and rose from his seat, his tall frame commanding attention as he strode toward the counter. The other customers noticed him immediately, whispers rippling through the crowd as they recognized the NBA superstar. But Steph wasn't there for the attention. He was there to stand up for someone who couldn't easily stand up for himself. "Excuse me," Steph said, his calm yet authoritative voice cutting through the tension like a knife. The man in the suit turned, clearly annoyed at being interrupted. When he recognized who had spoken, his face flickered with surprise, followed by an awkward smile. "Oh wow, Steph Curry, big fan, man," he said, his tone suddenly dripping with forced enthusiasm. Steph ignored the man's attempt to curry favor. Instead, he focused on Jake, whose face was still pale but now showed a glimmer of relief at having someone else step in. "Are you okay?" Steph asked gently, his question directed at Jake. Jake nodded, though his hands were still trembling. I think so," he murmured. Steph turned his attention back to the man in the suit. "You know," he began, his voice steady but laced with a quiet intensity. "It takes a lot of courage to work in a place like this, especially when you're dealing with people all day. But what doesn't take courage is yelling at someone just trying to do their job." The man's smile faded, replaced by a defensive scowl. "Look, I wasn't trying to be mean. I just wanted my drink made right." Steph raised an eyebrow. "There's a way to ask for that without tearing someone down. You don't know his story. You don't know the effort it takes for him to show up here every day and do his best. Maybe you should think about that before you start shouting." The man shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware that he was now the villain of the story. He glanced around the room, seeing the disapproving looks from other patrons. Muttering something under his breath, he grabbed the drink Sarah had remade for him and left the cafe without another word. Steph turned back to Jake and placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You're doing a great job," he said warmly. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Jake's face lit up with a shy smile, the first sign of relief since the ordeal began. "Thank you," he said softly. The other customers broke into spontaneous applause, their collective support filling the room with an energy that erased the negativity of the earlier confrontation. Sarah smiled at Steph, grateful for his intervention. "Thank you for standing up for him," she said. Steph shrugged modestly. "I just said what needed to be said. He didn't deserve that." Jake returned to work with renewed confidence, buoyed by the kind words and support he had received. The incident, while painful, became a turning point for him. It reminded him that for every harsh voice in the world, there were far more kind ones willing to stand up for what was right. As for Steph, he quietly returned to his seat and picked up his book, blending back into the background as if nothing had happened. But the story of what he had done that day would ripple through the cafe's patrons and beyond, a powerful reminder that kindness and courage could change the course of someone's day, or even their life. As the door swung shut behind the man in the suit, a collective exhalation filled the cafe. People turned back to their conversations, a murmur of approval and admiration following Steph Curry as he walked back to his seat. Though the moment had passed, its emotional weight lingered in the air. Jake, who had resumed carefully preparing drinks, seemed steadier now, his movements precise and deliberate as always. Yet there was something new in his demeanor, a quiet sense of validation, a shield against the sharp edges of the world. Jake's mind worked differently from most, a mosaic of logic, detail, and sensitivity that allowed him to excel in tasks requiring precision, but made it difficult to process sudden emotional confrontations. The interaction with the angry customer had sent his thoughts into a whirlwind, a cacophony of self-doubt and anxiety. But Steph's words had cut through the noise, offering clarity and reassurance. Jake replayed the scene in his mind, not to dwell on the negativity, but to anchor himself to the support he had felt in that moment. The cafe had become a microcosm of humanity, of cruelty and kindness, of power and humility. Customers continued to exchange glances, some whispering about Steph's unexpected intervention. Others offered Jake small gestures of encouragement, a smile, an extra thank you, or a quick word of praise. It was as if the room had collectively decided to counterbalance the earlier ugliness with as much kindness as it could muster. Meanwhile, Steph sat back at his table, his book open but forgotten. His mind was elsewhere, reflecting on the scene that had just unfolded. Steph wasn't one to seek confrontation, but he had long believed in using his platform and presence to stand up for others. Over the years, he had encountered countless fans and strangers, each with their own stories and struggles. Moments like this, though small in the grand scheme of things, felt deeply significant. They were a chance to connect on a human level, to remind people of their shared responsibility toward one another. The cafe's atmosphere began to shift back to its usual rhythm. Laughter bubbled up from a corner where a group of friends had gathered. A mother soothed her fussy toddler while balancing a steaming cup of tea. The baristas moved with practiced efficiency, their hands flying over the machines as they prepared drinks for the steady stream of customers. As the afternoon wore on, Jake continued his work with renewed focus. His confidence grew with each order he prepared, bolstered by the outpouring of support. He began to notice the small, quiet ways people were reaching out to him. A regular customer giving him an extra large tip, a young woman leaning over the counter to tell him, "You're doing amazing, Jake." These gestures weren't just kind, they were transformative. Each one chipped away at the self-doubt planted by the earlier encounter, leaving room for self-assurance to take root. Steph watched from his corner, occasionally catching Jake's eye and offering an encouraging nod. He had no desire to overshadow the young man's moment of growth. For Steph, the day had started as just another routine visit to his favorite cafe, a brief respite from the demands of his career. Now it had turned into something far more meaningful, a chance to witness and contribute to a story of resilience and redemption. Hours later, as the sun dipped lower in the sky, the cafe began to quiet down. The rush had subsided, and the once crowded space now had only a handful of patrons scattered across its tables. Jake was wiping down the counters, his movements methodical and unhurried. Sarah approached him, her expression a mix of concern and pride. "Jake," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "How are you feeling?" Jake paused, looking up at her. "I'm okay," he said after a moment. His voice was steady, though there was a vulnerability in his eyes that hadn't fully disappeared. "It was hard, but I think I'm okay." Sarah smiled warmly. "You handled yourself really well. I'm proud of you." Jake hesitated, then nodded. "It helped when Steph said what he did, and when you stood up for me." "That's what we're here for," Sarah replied. "You're part of this team, Jake. We've got your back." As she walked away, Jake allowed himself a small smile. The earlier confrontation had left its mark, but it had also revealed something profound. He wasn't alone. He had a support system, both in his co-workers and in the strangers who had rallied around him. It was a realization that brought him a sense of belonging he hadn't often experienced. Steph lingered in the cafe longer than he had planned, savoring the quiet moments as the day wound down. He had always loved places like this, unassuming, filled with life and stories, yet offering a kind of solace that was hard to find elsewhere. His eyes drifted back to Jake, who was now chatting softly with another barista as they cleaned up for the evening. There was a calmness about the young man now, a stark contrast to the anxiety Steph had seen in his face earlier. Steph thought about his own journey, the challenges he had faced in his career, and the people who had supported him along the way. He knew how much a kind word or a small act of encouragement could mean, especially when someone was struggling. In Jake, he saw a reflection of the same determination and heart that had carried him through his toughest moments. It was a reminder of the resilience that existed in all of them, waiting to be nurtured. As the cafe prepared to close, Steph approached the counter one last time. Jake looked up, his eyes widening slightly as he recognized him. "Hi," Jake said, his voice a little stronger than before. "Can I get you anything else?" Steph shook his head. "I just wanted to say goodbye and thank you for the coffee. You're really good at what you do." Jake blinked, surprised by the compliment. "Thank you," he said quietly, a genuine smile spreading across his face. Steph extended a hand and Jake hesitated only for a moment before shaking it. "Keep doing what you're doing," Steph said. "You've got something special, Jake." As Steph turned to leave, the entire cafe seemed to watch him go, the weight of his presence lingering long after the door closed behind him. But for Jake, it wasn't just the fact that a celebrity had stood up for him that mattered. It was the way Steph had treated him, with kindness, respect, and recognition. It was a gift Jake would carry with him long after the day's events faded into memory. The story of what had happened in the cafe spread quickly thanks to the customers who had witnessed it. A video taken by a young woman near the counter went viral on social media, capturing the moment Steph Curry had stepped in to defend Jake. The clip was shared millions of times, accompanied by messages about kindness, empathy, and standing up for others. News outlets picked up the story, framing it as yet another example of Steph's character and his commitment to making a difference off the court. But for Jake, the impact of the day wasn't about the viral fame or the public attention. It was about the quiet, personal transformation he had experienced. The incident had tested his resilience, but it had also shown him the power of community and the strength he had within himself. It was a lesson he would carry with him, not just at the cafe, but in every aspect of his life. Weeks later, a regular customer walked into the cafe and handed Jake a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note that read, "I was there that day. You inspired me with your grace and courage. Keep shining." Jake folded the note carefully and tucked it into his pocket, his heart swelling with gratitude. Steph, too, reflected on the incident as he moved on with his busy life. He often thought about the young man behind the counter, the way he had stood tall in the face of adversity and found his footing with the support of those around him. It reminded Steph of why he valued his platform, not just for the accolades or the spotlight, but for moments like this, where he could make a real difference in someone's life. The cafe remained a place of connection and humanity, its walls echoing with laughter, conversation, and the occasional reminder of a day when kindness had triumphed over cruelty. And Jake, with his quiet determination and newfound confidence, continued to greet each customer with his signature smile and his heartfelt wish. Have a wonderful day. As days turned into weeks, the story of what had happened at the cafe began to ripple outward in unexpected ways. The video of Steph Curry stepping in to defend Jake had garnered millions of views. But it wasn't just the celebrity aspect that captured people's attention. It was the raw humanity of the moment. A young man, visibly struggling, being unfairly targeted, only for a bystander to step in and remind everyone of the importance of empathy and respect. The story sparked discussions in workplaces, schools, and homes about how society treats people who are perceived as different or vulnerable. For Jake, the days following the incident brought new challenges and opportunities. At first, he struggled with the attention. Customers who had seen the video would sometimes linger at the counter, eager to talk to him or commend his courage. While their intentions were kind, the sudden influx of attention often felt overwhelming. Jake wasn't used to being in the spotlight, and the pressure to constantly meet people's expectations weighed on him. Sarah, ever perceptive, noticed Jake's unease and took steps to protect him. She adjusted the cafe's workflow to give him breaks when the attention became too much and gently redirected customers who lingered too long. "Jake is here to do his job," she would explain kindly but firmly. "He appreciates your support, but let's give him space to keep doing what he loves." Her efforts helped, and Jake began to find a rhythm again. He learned to navigate the extra attention by focusing on what he did best, making coffee, connecting with regulars, and maintaining his meticulous routines. He even started to embrace small moments of interaction, offering a quiet thank you or a shy smile to those who praised him. Over time, he came to see the incident not just as a difficult experience, but as a turning point that had shown him the strength of the community around him. One evening, as Jake was cleaning the espresso machine, a middle-aged woman approached the counter. She had kind eyes and a nervous energy that reminded Jake of himself. She introduced herself as Claire, the mother of a teenage boy with autism. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "My son saw the video of what happened here, and it meant so much to him. He's always worried about how people will treat him when he gets older. But seeing you stand strong, and seeing someone like Steph Curry step in, gave him so much hope." Jake listened intently, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and humility. "Thank you," he said softly. "That means a lot to me." Claire smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. "You've inspired more people than you know." That interaction marked a shift for Jake. He began to see himself not just as a barista, but as someone who could make a difference in ways he hadn't imagined. He started volunteering at a local autism support group, sharing his experiences and encouraging others to pursue their goals despite the challenges they might face. His story became a source of inspiration for parents, educators, and individuals with autism who were navigating their own journeys. Meanwhile, Steph Curry found himself reflecting on the incident more often than he expected. While his life was a whirlwind of games, practices, and media appearances, the memory of the cafe stayed with him. He couldn't shake the image of Jake standing behind the counter, facing down the storm of the angry customer with quiet dignity. It reminded Steph of the countless unsung heroes in everyday life, people who showed up, did their best, and persevered in the face of adversity. During a press conference a few weeks later, a reporter asked Steph about the viral video. "What made you decide to step in?" the reporter asked. Steph paused, considering his answer. "Honestly, it wasn't a decision," he said. "It was just the right thing to do. Jake was doing his job, and he didn't deserve to be treated like that. I think we all have a responsibility to stand up for each other, especially when we see someone being mistreated. It's not about being a hero, it's about being human." The clip of Steph's response quickly went viral, sparking even more conversations about kindness and allyship. Schools incorporated the story into lessons about empathy, using it as an example of how small actions could make a big difference. Social media lit up with stories of people stepping in to support others, inspired by what had happened at the cafe. Steph didn't stop there. He reached out to Sarah and arranged a visit to the cafe on a quiet afternoon. This time, it wasn't about making headlines. It was about checking in with Jake and offering his continued support. When Steph walked through the door, Jake's face lit up with a mixture of surprise and excitement. "Hey, Jake," Steph said, extending a hand. "How have you been?" Jake shook his hand, his grip a little firmer than before. "I've been good," he said. "Busy, but good." Steph smiled. "I've been hearing a lot about you. Sounds like you've been inspiring a lot of people." Jake blushed, looking down at the counter. "I guess," he said. "It's been different, but in a good way." The two chatted for a while, the conversation easy and natural. Steph asked about Jake's favorite parts of the job, his hobbies, and how he was handling the newfound attention. Jake, feeling more comfortable than he had in weeks, opened up about his love for puzzles, his dream of visiting Japan, and the sense of accomplishment he felt every time he mastered a new skill at work. Before leaving, Steph handed Jake a signed Warriors jersey with a note that read, "To Jake, keep being amazing. The world needs more people like you. Steph." Jake held the jersey like it was a priceless artifact, his smile stretching from ear to ear. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The story continued to evolve, touching lives in ways none of them could have anticipated. The cafe became something of a landmark, with visitors stopping by not just for the coffee, but for the chance to experience the place where the now famous moment of kindness had occurred. Sarah used the increased attention to raise awareness about autism and advocate for inclusive hiring practices. She hosted community events, inviting speakers to talk about neurodiversity and creating opportunities for people with disabilities to showcase their talents. Jake became a quiet ambassador for the cause. He spoke at a local high school, sharing his story with students and encouraging them to stand up for what was right. He attended a charity gala organized by the Warriors, where he met other advocates and exchanged ideas about how to make workplaces more inclusive. Each new experience pushed him slightly outside his comfort zone, but with each step, his confidence grew. One day, a young man named Alex walked into the cafe and introduced himself to Jake. Alex, who also had autism, had been struggling to find work and was feeling discouraged. "I saw your story online," Alex said. "It made me think maybe I could do something like this too." Jake listened intently, his heart aching with understanding. "You can," he said. "It's not always easy, but it's worth it. If you want, I can help you get started." The two exchanged contact information, and Jake became a mentor to Alex, guiding him through the job application process and sharing tips on how to handle challenging situations. It was a role Jake never would have imagined for himself a few months earlier, but one he embraced with quiet determination. As the months went by, the impact of that single moment in the cafe continued to unfold. Jake's journey became a testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and community. It showed that even in the face of adversity, people could come together to create something beautiful, a ripple effect of positivity that extended far beyond the walls of the cafe. For Steph, the incident reaffirmed his belief in the importance of using his influence to make a difference. Whether he was speaking to a room full of fans or quietly supporting someone behind the scenes, he remained committed to the idea that true greatness wasn't just about what you achieved, but about how you uplifted others along the way. And for everyone who had witnessed or heard about the moment, it served as a reminder of the profound impact one act of kindness could have. It was a story of a young man finding his voice, a community rallying together, and a superstar using his platform to amplify a message of empathy and respect. The cafe, once just a small corner of the city, had become a beacon of hope, a place where the walls told a story. The staff radiated warmth, and the coffee tasted just a little sweeter because it was served with a side of humanity. Jake, now a symbol of perseverance and quiet strength, greeted each new day with the same simple wish he had always offered: "Have a wonderful day." But now, those words carried a weight that resonated far beyond the counter, reaching into the hearts of everyone who heard them. As the years passed, the cafe remained a fixture in the community, its story growing into something of a local legend. Jake, who had once been the quiet barista in the background, had become a cornerstone of the team and a familiar face to countless regulars. His confidence had blossomed in ways that even he hadn't anticipated, and with each passing day, he found new ways to challenge himself and grow. One particularly memorable moment came when the cafe hosted a fundraiser to support autism awareness. The event featured local musicians, speakers, and an auction that included memorabilia signed by Steph Curry. Jake was asked to give a short speech about his journey, something that initially filled him with trepidation. Public speaking wasn't something he had ever imagined doing, let alone in front of a packed crowd. But when the moment came, Jake stepped onto the small stage with steady resolve. He began hesitantly, his voice low, but as he spoke about his experiences, his words gained strength. He shared how he had struggled with self-doubt, how the kindness of others had lifted him, and how he now worked to extend that same support to others. "I used to think that being different was something to hide," he said, looking out at the audience. "But now I see that it's what makes us unique. It's what makes us strong." The room erupted in applause, a standing ovation that brought tears to Jake's eyes. Afterward, dozens of people approached him, sharing their own stories and thanking him for his bravery. It was a moment of profound connection, one that underscored just how far Jake had come and how much further he could go. Steph Curry, who couldn't attend the event due to his demanding schedule, sent a video message that played at the end of the night. In it, he congratulated Jake and the cafe team for their efforts, praising their work in creating an inclusive space and inspiring others. "Jake, you're a true champion," Steph said in the video, his warm smile radiating through the screen. "Keep leading the way. You're making the world a better place." The fundraiser was a resounding success, raising significant funds for local autism support programs and sparking further interest in inclusive hiring initiatives. Jake's story was now more than an individual triumph. It had become a catalyst for change, influencing policies and practices in workplaces across the region. Other businesses reached out to Sarah for advice on how to create environments where neurodivergent employees could thrive. For Jake, each new day brought opportunities to pay forward the kindness and support he had received. Whether it was mentoring a new hire, sharing a quiet word of encouragement, or simply doing his job with care and dedication, Jake had found his purpose. His story, once defined by struggle, had become one of empowerment, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, compassion and perseverance could light the way forward. Years later, the cafe continued to be a thriving hub of warmth and inclusivity, its legacy intertwined with the story of Jake and the unforgettable moment that had changed so many lives. Jake had become more than a barista. He was now an advocate and a leader within his community. He had expanded his work beyond the cafe, collaborating with organizations to promote neurodiversity in workplaces and speaking at conferences to inspire others. One day, Jake received an invitation to attend a gala honoring individuals who had made significant contributions to advancing inclusivity and awareness for people with autism. To his astonishment, Steph Curry was listed as the keynote speaker. At the event, Jake and Steph reunited, their handshake now a firm embrace. Steph spoke of the power of everyday heroes like Jake and how their courage often ignited change in ways unseen but deeply felt. When Jake took the stage to accept his award, he stood tall, the once shy barista now a beacon of resilience. "This journey has taught me that every act of kindness matters," he said. "Every voice, no matter how quiet, can inspire change." His words resonated deeply, reminding everyone present that transformation begins with small, brave steps. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the customer's behavior toward the employee with autism? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.